the world's most famous religious leader and a prominent hard-hearted Republican both seem to agree with President Obama that income inequality is the defining challenge of our age, as the president called it recently. I'm PJTV's Scott Ott, joined now by Bill Whittle and Stephen Green for part two of a three-part trifecta on this topic. In part one, we asked if the issue really has traction, and in our members-only part three, we'll challenge the trifecta team to come up with a counter-narrative. Well, Pope Francis says that Marxism is wrong, but his Marxist friends are good people. And yet, in his recent exhortation, he calls unfettered capitalism a new tyranny and says, quote, as long as the problems of the poor are not radically resolved by rejecting the absolute autonomy of markets and financial speculation and by attacking the structural causes of inequality, no solution will be found for the world's problems, or for that matter, to any problems. Listen now as our president links arms with the Pope against all ye who would defend the savage inequalities of capitalism.
So the basic bargain at the heart of our economy has frayed. In fact, this trend towards growing inequality is not unique to America's market economy. Across the developed world, inequality has increased. Some of you may have seen just last week, the Pope himself spoke about this at eloquent length. How can it be, he wrote, that it's not a news item when an elderly homeless person dies of exposure, but it is news when the stock market loses 2 points? But this increasing inequality is most pronounced in our country, and it challenges the very essence of who we are as a people.
Now, Stephen Green, in this corner, we have the tag team of Pontifex Maximus and the coolest president ever. And in the other corner, we have Gordon Gekko, Bernie Madoff, and Mitt Romney. Are we hearing the first strains of the swan song of capitalism?
I'm furious right now.
Yeah, me too.
That is the biggest string of lies I think I have ever heard this president or anybody utter. Every single one of his policies is designed from the ground up to increase income inequality. You know, they stole from generations of Americans unborn with all of this reckless spending to pay off their millionaire buddies making batteries nobody wants to buy. Dodd-Frank put the squeeze on you and me to prop up too big to fail banks. Obamacare is killing the middle class, and it's killing young people by funneling money from them to older, richer people who can afford their own insurance. This man is so full of crap, I just can't take it anymore, and he's going to bring this country down on these lies that he tells to Americans who are too scared to tell the difference anymore.
Yeah.
Well, talk about piling on. Here's the anti-Obama, the former House Speaker Newt Gingrich, and what he had to say.
Is this an issue that Republicans should be talking about?
Absolutely. I mean, how can you justify the level of wealth in those big towers in New York City, right, and the level of poverty in those alleys? Absolutely. And without talking about government, say, surely a society that cared, that believed every person was endowed by their creator with the right to pursue happiness, would come up with a better solution than 22,000 children that are homeless. And I think that the Republican Party has an obligation to rethink some of its indifference to the very poor. And I think the Democrats have an obligation to ask themselves, after 50 years of the war on poverty, isn't it clear the government is not a very good...
Well, except for that, wait a minute, hold on here.
Now, Bill Whittle, what can lovers of liberty and capitalism do when one of their own mouthpieces concedes that, you know, the Obama papal premise? And frankly, aren't they right? I mean, the presence of crushing poverty in the midst of historic wealth should be an abomination that calls for a vigorous response, right?
I'll give you a vigorous response. The first thing we can do, as far as Newt Gingrich is concerned, is thank God he wasn't the nominee. That's the first thing we can do. All right? This entire idea is bogus from the get-go. It's absolutely outrageous. It's a lie constructed from the beginning. It's like climate change. The climate has always been changing. There's never been a period in Earth's history when the climate was not changing. So the entire premise is a lie and fraud on the beginning. So let's talk about this income inequality issue, right? You are asking people to believe And we use it in our language all the time. We talk about the less fortunate, the less fortunate. He's more fortunate than he is. He's unfortunate. It's not got anything to do with fortune. You are born into the world, into a high-income family or a low-income family. That is fortune. That is just randomness, and that is luck. This idea that we are welded into place at birth is an idea that has filled human history, and the only exception to that idea has been the United States of America. The only time in the history of the world, the essence of the American dream, and the reason there is no French dream or German dream or English dream or Swedish dream, is because the essence of the American dream is the understanding that no matter where you come in to the world, you are free to move your position up or down depending on your own lights, your own hard work, and your own desires. So this entire argument is nonsense from the ground up. When you talk about people who are living in skyscrapers and people who are down in the gutter, you have to start asking yourself about what is it about the behaviors of people that puts some people in skyscrapers and other people in gutters. This idea that this thing is just handed out by the fate fairy is absolutely not true. It's un-American and it's ridiculous. And the entire history of America is the absolute evidence that this theory that you can bring yourself up is in fact correct, because as President Liar said at the beginning of this diatribe, he said, oh, it's unbelievable that so many children could be born into poverty in America. Well, if you're born into poverty in America, you are also born into the richest 7% of humans on the face of the earth. If you are born the poorest American today, you are richer than 93% of the rest of the population of planet Earth. Scott? So there must be something to this income equality idea when the bottom of this stack is higher than 93% of the rest of the planet. I'd do this all day. I could do this all day with every single one of these points, but the whole thing is a giant fraud designed to gain power for this lying, narcissist, Marxist, traitor bastard.
Well, it's tempting to blame capitalism until one considers, as Bill has, that no other economic system has produced greater income equality. Perhaps the savage inequalities are the result of something fundamental in the heart of man, regardless of which system of government he adopts. But the president, the Pope, and the former House Speaker seem transfixed by an abstract concept, income inequality, rather than grappling with historic reality. The real offense here is not poverty, since the poor we have always had with us. The problem is the opportunity for wealth that exceeds the dreams of our most visionary ancestors. And if I'm right about that, then the president will never settle for merely raising the income of the poor. I invite you to join us for our members-only Part 3, when we'll face the challenge of crafting a better narrative about liberty and opportunity. If you're not a member yet, now's the time to click the subscribe link at the top of the page. For Bill Whittle, Stephen Green, and the entire Trifecta crew at pjtv.com, I'm Scott Ott.